Mrs. Happy Catholic here, seeking to bring you authenticity, perspective, and connectedness. Welcome. Hello, everyone. I'm Mrs. Happy Catholic, and welcome to my channel. Today, I wanted to address a few things that have been going around the internet about TradRecovery.com and the conference that we're planning to host in July in Montana. And there was a lot of upset and some confusion. And I want to apologize for the part that I played in that, as far as not being more careful to define the terms that we were using and to explain how we use those terms. I understand from another angle, if I didn't know what I know and I heard the word traditionalist being bandied about in various ways, I might feel that that was unfair. So I sympathize with that, and I don't want to cause anybody undue distress. So I just do want to get into that definition a little bit. I have explained this in other videos, but it's good to have a dedicated space for it. So when we use the word traditionalism, especially myself and the community at TradRecovery.com, we're talking about traditionalism not being traditional as a Catholic. Every Catholic should be traditional and should appreciate and love tradition and have respect for the customs of the church over all times, even if you don't prefer them all. But it's all part of our heritage, and I love it, and I hope that everybody else can love it the same. But traditionalism, it takes that a step further. When you take a preference or something that you care about and you add the ism, basically you make it like an ideology that defines your faith, and that gets dangerous, because what happens in traditionalism, as we understand it and as we see it and its fruits every day in our ministry, is that people are dissenting from, they're rejecting or suspicious of the magisterium since and including Vatican II and all the popes since, and the reform of the liturgy and the sacraments as promulgated by Vatican II. And so they hold those either, like in suspicion with great criticism, or they just wholesale reject them and say, you can't depend on it. It's erroneous. The church has defected, or we aren't sure, but it sure would look like that, and basically this real attitude of distrust of the church. And what that does over time is it really seeps into your soul, and it affects directly your relationship with God and your relationship with your neighbors, your view of the church as a whole, of the hierarchy, of the other members of the church. And it devolves into a lot of judgment and cultish behavior, elitist mentality, and various kinds of abuse. And that is what we are here to help counteract. We want to offer people who've experienced those negative things in whatever expression of Catholicism they have found themselves, to have a place to go to sort through everything and unpack it, to go, what was good about my experience? What was bad about my experience? What was true Catholic teaching and what was slanted? Like, were people confused around me that were forming me? Were they maliciously, changing information or representing church teaching in a false light? Like, what is the truth and what is error? Because they want to follow the church and they want to be faithful. And what's really cool about Trad Recovery is that the people that go there want to hang on to their Catholic faith. Like, they've had really rough times, and they've had a lot of difficult things that have challenged their faith, or maybe they've been away from the church for a while, but they just really want to come back, but they're not sure how to navigate that. And so they need a community of people where they can just honestly share their experience without being judged, and say, this is what happened. These are my questions. And people are there to support them and say, have you looked into this? What do you think about this? Or that was my experience too. And overwhelmingly, we receive positive feedback from this. This work has been very fruitful, and lots of people are benefiting from it every day. And it's grown a lot. I mean, a year ago, we launched this website and it already has over 300 members. And so it's really great to see that going. And even since the news, eruption in the last few days, I've gotten definitely more positive people sending supporting emails and texts saying, I'm so sorry this is happening, and we're praying for you, and we're so grateful for your ministry. Just know that you make a difference and that we needed this in our lives. And so I really want to thank those people, because it's so good to know what it's doing for you and that it's making a positive difference, that people need this, and that's why we're here. And if the title is offensive, it was not intended to be. We gave it careful thought, and it was the best we could come up with at the time, because by saying traditionalism, like people who are recovering from traditionalism come here, we're not saying everyone in traditionalism needs to recover, or that everyone, that we need to consider what we are saying and what we're not. So some people have reacted to the existence of TradRecovery as a slight, as if I am tarring all traditionalists with the same brush, or saying that because, certain people like certain things, therefore it means they have some kind of disease they need to be cured of and recover from. And that's actually not what we're saying. We're saying that some people in traditionalism have been hurt in various ways, and their faith has been negatively affected. They need somewhere to go where they can figure out what happened. Where they can figure out what happened and how to correct their course, so that they understand, what is the church asking me to do? How can I fully, faithfully live out my Catholicism and have an understanding group of people who support them and who have been through similar things? Okay. So it's not an affront to anybody. And if people are affronted, I guess I'm surprised in seeing this reaction that more people aren't saying, wow, well, that wasn't my experience, but I'm glad that there's something like that for those people. At least acknowledging that it has happened, and that, those people have a place to go. It doesn't necessarily mean that, you are one of those people, or that your movement as a whole is a bad thing. It's just, there are traditionalists who have been hurt, and they need someone to take care of them. They need somebody to help them. And they're in touch with me all the time. Like, people who are in these situations that need support, and they very frequently don't find that support from their trad family members and friends. So they need other people. And so we're trying to provide that. And we have an international community at TradRecovery, and we are really making connections, seeing growth, and a lot of positivity and good development in people's spiritual lives. Like, they're getting closer to God. They're growing in their love and understanding of their Catholic faith, and in practicing all these wonderful devotions and things. I mean, it's really fruitful. So I just want you to know that that is really the bulk. That is what is going on at this site and in this community. And that's what I'm trying to assist by having interviews and the videos that I put on my channel. It's not that we're going after anybody. We're just trying to be present for those who need it. So sorry if I was redundant with that. I want to add too that I wish that TradRecovery would be given some credit as far as the fact that we are here to help people continue to practice their faith and to hold on to it, instead of what often happens when people have been disillusioned and harmed in various ways in traditionalism, where they completely abandon the practice of religion and they feel like they can never go back to a church. They can never see a priest in clericals again, or whatever it is. They're afraid to go anywhere else because traditionalism can poison them against anything else. But when it turns its back on them, they have nowhere to go. And so often, very frequently, they end up turning to hedonistic lifestyles and a complete abandonment of faith, hoping that maybe there's God out there somewhere, but they don't think that they can be close to him or really know for sure, because they're so confused and they are so broken. And that's not something we want to see happen. We want people to understand that there are more ways to express your faith and to live fully in the church than just that one view that those people have been exposed to. So, but yeah, it does. The reaction that I got from the news going so public about our site, I was trying to keep it under wraps, but all these rather well-known trad apologists were having some upset reactions to it and telling people to go check us out or contact us and let us know how unhappy they were about what we were doing and things like that. But they didn't really try to understand what we were doing and if our intentions were bad at all in the beginning. So they jumped to conclusions, which is unfortunate, rather than trying to find context or reaching out and saying, do I have this right? What is the purpose of your ministry? Not one of them has done that. And so that's disappointing. But it's what happens. Oh, so we see all these trads and various people reacting violently to this news. And I'm just curious because the initial reaction I'm seeing is, well, how dare they have this ministry? How dare they use these terms? What does that say about me? They're making me look bad. They're threatening things that I care about. And that's a very, I'm sorry, but it's a very selfish reaction. Instead of being concerned for people who've had a bad experience, being like, oh, yeah, how should those people get help? It's like, what does this mean for me? What does this say about me? How dare they? Okay, I just have to put that out there. I would recommend that if that's how you have been feeling, that you maybe challenge yourself a little bit to look into that, because it rings very similar to the common treatment of abuse victims in various trad circles, of which I know. Often, especially sexual abuse victims, when they come public with their information, usually the reaction is pretty violent and condemning of them, saying it was their fault, or that they're just lying, or they're trying to get attention, or that they should have just put their heads down and put up with it and kept going to church at the same place no matter what. And people are so upset, or they say, how could you say that about this priest or this nun? They say the Latin Mass, they attend the Latin Mass, or this father of this family, he attends the Latin Mass. How could he do something like that? And that is very common. It's victim blaming when they're the ones that need the support and the healing. And it takes a ton of courage to get out and say that in the first place. And they're very fearful, and it's for a reason, because they run into this kind of reaction. And it's because people have formed an attachment to something good, but that attachment has grown into a disordered attachment, which then translates into, if anything threatens this, I'm going to fight back, even if it's somebody I love. If I perceive it as a threat, then it is an enemy to me. And then we get into character disparagement, where people are willing to tear apart people's reputations online, in person, whatever, without really knowing or understanding them or giving them the benefit of the doubt. And just common charity, like, that's nowhere to be found in Catholic moral theology about the practice of charity or fraternal correction. You don't take someone's name and person and shred them all over the internet. It actually discredits the person who does that, because that's not appropriate and it's not godly. It reminds me of Muslim jihad and how they believe it's a righteous act to kill an unbeliever. So you're doing the same thing. If that's what you're doing the same thing with your words and what you're spreading around. And a lot of times you are lying outright in doing that, because most people are not as bad as they're painted. Or you just misunderstood. You did not really know that person well enough. And it's crazy how easy it is to get sucked into the rumor mill and saying things that you've heard that you aren't really sure about, that haven't been verified, but you're like, oh, well, so-and-so told me and I trust them. And that's true, but a lot can get lost along the way. So I just want to encourage people to try to go back to the source and get some context and really look at the facts for yourself before you just take someone else's word for it. And if you want to know more, ask. We're not going to chase anybody away. We're not going to throw darts at you. We want to be here to care for each other. And if you don't agree with that or the way that we're doing that, that's okay. We don't have to agree on everything. But I believe that people are trying their best, and I'm trying my best according to what I believe God is calling me to do. And I just would hope that people would honor and respect that. Also, we've had a lot of site members join up in the last few days as a result of all the press. And I know that some of them have been trolling the site, trying to take screenshots and to pry into people's posts and then go spread that around the internet and use it in part to discredit what we're doing. And I've read some of the posts where they have totally lied about things that were said on the website, things that were never said. They told their social media followers that we did say, or they totally twisted what we were in fact saying and doing. And so it's just unfortunate. I've had to take more measures to guard the confidentiality of the people on our site, because this is supposed to be a safe place for them to connect with each other and to be able to honestly talk about what's on their mind and not have to worry about it getting plastered all over the internet where they didn't choose to put it. So I would just make a plea to people's common decency that they would refrain from doing that. We are going to try to vet people a little more carefully when they join the site to make sure that we maintain the integrity of the privacy of the other members. Because if you don't agree with it, then leave it alone. But that's really not okay. And that's really what prompted me finally to make a response video, is that kind of behavior is just so unacceptable. Personal attacks or whatever, you can say whatever you want about me, but if you're going to go after the community, that's not okay. So please do take that to prayer, if you would, and examine yourself if that's really a right way to go about this whole thing. If you want dialogue with us, please reach out. We will talk to you. But we aren't going to just be screamed at and things. Thank goodness there haven't been a lot of angry phone calls. But there's been definitely some flack and whatever. It's just what happens. But we just want to encourage people to be charitable and respectful. Even when we don't agree with someone, we think they're terribly wrong. You can still respect them as a human being that God loves and entrust them to God and pray for them. Just pray all the more, because if you know something we don't, and we all need continuing conversion, that's only going to do good. So we're praying for you. Please pray for us. I recently had a friend comment on some of the interviews and the guests that I've had on my channel who've shared their personal stories of leaving traditionalism for, plain old Catholicism. And she made a remark about them being extreme cases. And so glad I was able to share with her, actually, just so you know, like the people that consent to be interviewed by me, those are honestly representative of the very mild cases. Overall, their experiences are more on the low key side of what I hear a lot about and encounter, and what many people encounter in traditionalism frequently. Their stories represent so many thousands and thousands of people who are experiencing and have gone through the same things that they have, that have negatively affected them and gave them good enough reason to take a closer look at the way they were living out their faith and to, reach out to grow closer to the church. So that it's indicative of so much. Like, every person that I interview is just another little example of this huge reality. Okay. But even the people that I interview, just so you know, they are all so conscious to be discreet, charitable, to not drag names through the mud, to not bring up unduly unpleasant details unless they feel they're necessary. And they try really hard to exercise prudence and kindness in what they present. I know their stories very well, and that they have a lot of things that, juicy details or things that would be very unflattering and damaging to the traditionalist movement that they could share, but they choose not to out of consideration for somebody that it might affect in an unduly negative way. And they're trying to exercise that charity. Okay. Also, the people that are the extreme cases who have had their lives so shattered by the experiences that they have had in traditionalist circles. Remember, traditionalism, as I have described it earlier, as dissenting from, suspicious of, and rejecting the magisterium of Vatican II and beyond, and the reform of the liturgy and the Mass. Okay, so in those environments, these people who have been so broken by what has happened to them and how they have been formed and manipulated and abused, they are so easily triggered by even just talking about what's happened to them that they can't stomach going on to do an interview, at least at this point, because it's just so awful. And it takes them right back to those terrible things they experienced. Or they are terribly afraid of what would happen if they were to expose the people that hurt them, the people that are doing to this day still terrible things in these groups. And they're afraid of what would happen to them and their families if they were to come public about it. So just so you know, there's a lot of this going on, and they're not all coming out and saying it because of various reasons: prudence, charity, and self-protection, honestly. So just know that, please, that I can't get into details, but that is all lurking there under the surface. So what you see is a very pale picture of what's really going on. And it's very disturbing. And until I was able to encounter the reality that so many of these people are experiencing, I would have been very dismissive of this whole thing. So I understand that. And that I understand if you're feeling upset that because you might love going to the 1962 liturgy and you say, what? I consider myself a traditionalist because of that. So these people are saying that I'm part of all this dysfunctional behavior and stuff. And I'm not saying that. That is not traditionalism. Traditionalism is a very specific movement and ideology. Loving tradition, loving the 1962 Mass, it's just appreciating our Catholic heritage. But it's what happens with that love that we have. It can be held loosely, in which we let God give it to us if he wills, and take it from us if he wills. But as soon as we start holding on tight and saying, I can't let this go, I can't be without it, I've got to have it in order to be saved, in order to be holy, in order to be truly Catholic, that's when we start having problems, when we start making it into an idol, and we become very defensive, and we lose our grip on reason and clarity and our trust in God and the church. We will not stand up to temptation if we are distrusting God, because he is going to take care of everything. It isn't up to us. We can pray and we can do our little part, but shouting out to get what we want, or to, sling back the people that we view as threats, it is not going to preserve what we love. It's going to actually fossilize that 1962 liturgy that you love into an emblem of dissent. That is part of what's happening in the church. It's not the liturgy that's at fault. The liturgy is fine. It's the attitudes and behavior that are creeping up around it and living in these people. And I can't just say radical traditionalists, because radical traditionalist seems to imply only those people that belong to overtly schismatic groups like Sedevacantists or the Society of St. Pius X or the SSPB, Okay, so those people, Catholics within the church would easily look at and go, well, those are radical traditionalists. I could see that. Okay, but that doesn't mean me. Maybe it doesn't mean you. But there are people, lots of clergy in these groups within the church who are fomenting the same attitudes and behaviors as what's going on in these schismatic groups. So it doesn't matter where their bodies are sitting on a Sunday. If their hearts are really not there, then that's what's the reality. And that's the spiritual reality that then ends up manifesting in physical ways and could end up with a canonical censure of excommunication or schism officially declared, whatever. Schisms happen very organically, and they start from inside, because fundamentally schism is a sin against charity. Then it seeps in slowly and it spreads. And so that's why I am not actively encouraging people to go and just go out and get involved in parishes where they have the 1962 liturgy, not because of the liturgy, but because I'm seeing these really disturbing trends. And what it develops into is basically another Protestantism, where it's protesting the actions of the church, the magisterial declarations, or the authentic disciplinary actions of the church, looking at them with suspicion or totally rejecting them. And we ultimately become our own judge and arbiter of truth. And it makes you very bitter. It hardens your heart. You become a Pharisee, just like the Pharisees of Jesus' time, to whom he was so scandalous. Jesus was not concerned with fulfilling every tittle of their expectations and adhering to every iota of the old law, because he came to fulfill the law and to bring us to a new level of relationship, instead of like categorizing our faith by all the boxes we check, all the externals, all those things that look so wonderful, that draw people to that movement in the first place. The externals that are good, but what is underneath that surface? That's what we're concerned about. And that's what people are getting hurt by. That's why TradRecovery is here. That's why we're having this conference. And honestly, the virulent reaction that we've seen in response to the conference only confirms the fact that this is needed. This conversation is needed. This resource is needed. And people need to understand what influence traditionalism is having in the church right now, and whether that influence is for good or evil. And we've got to talk about it. We've got to examine it and go into those uncomfortable places and say, I love these things. These things are important to me. How can I have these things in my life and still be totally Catholic and totally confident that God is in control and that he is blessing, guiding the church, our indefectible, indissoluble church that will be here until the end of time, visibly here until the end of time. I think God can do that. I believe he can. And I want everyone to believe he can. So we hope to give people a boost so that they can have that confidence and that understanding, instead of having to judge and weigh everything themselves and to live in fear, or to view God as somebody distant and threatening, because that has harmed so many people's spiritual development. And it's not true. It's just another regurgitation of Jansenism and Gallicanism and so many of the isms. It's like the only ism we need is Catholicism. We need to be Catholic. We don't need to qualify that. Please don't qualify your Catholicism. If you are Catholic, just be Catholic. There's a great book coming out. My friend Andrew Mione is writing. And in the first part of that book, he talks about using the term traditionalist. And he said, saying that you're a traditional Catholic is an unnecessary qualifier. And it also denotes that there is such a thing as an untraditional Catholic, which there really isn't. But as soon as you say that term, I'm a traditional Catholic, especially to someone of goodwill, they're going to hear that and go, oh, well, that sounds really legit. Like Catholic Church believes in tradition. So if I want to be a real good Catholic, I should be a traditional Catholic too. Well, what does that mean? Why is it different from these other things? And then they go into the weeds and they get all sucked up into these rabbit holes and of conspiracy theories and misinformation and things that really distract them from the spiritual growth that's supposed to be happening in this journey in the church. And so I just really don't want that to happen. I don't think that's necessary. And I wish people would stop using the qualifier. If you must, you can always say, I'm Catholic and I love the 1962 Mass. I go to it all the time. I think it's beautiful. I prefer older usages, but, it's all ours, everything in the church. And if the church approves it, I can receive it and I can trust that it is not fundamentally harmful to my soul. And that's a Catholic attitude. If we're not thinking like that, we're verging on something else that's very dangerous to us and everybody that we're around. And it's not building up the body of Christ. And that's what we're called to do. So I just really wanted to put that out there today. Just encourage you to think about that and just to give everybody a chance to be themselves and to be as authentically Catholic as they are capable of being right now. And that we're here to try to help that happen in the best way that we can. And so please pray for us. And thank you for listening. I hope that if you haven't already, go to the conference page on our website, www.tradrecovery.com/conference, and read about our event in July and see if it's something that you might feel called to participate in. And hopefully we get to know each other. And God bless you. Take care and happy Holy Week.